Hi, hi, hi. We have some folks who are joining us. Welcome, welcome. We are going to give everybody just another 2 minutes to join in. So if you could just hold off with us, we'll start exactly at 7:02 so we can make sure folks who want to attend are able to do so. For those of you who just signed in, we're going to start exactly at 7:02 to let everybody have the opportunity to join in. All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. For those of you, I think almost everybody knows me by now, but if you don't, I am Emily Carson. I am the very proud head of school here at Harlem Hebrew, and I am really grateful to have this opportunity tonight to really talk about arrival and dismissal and what it's going to look like this year. I think for our returning families, this is something always on top of mind for us, and is now more than ever before. And before we dive in, I just want to say thank you so much for just generally taking this time to be with us. And also, this is one of our bulletin boards that is hanging up in the school, and you might not get a chance to see it. Your kids will get to see it, but even with all of these extra complications this year, we really just are so excited to get to be with kids, and we have had really the best time over the last week and a half, even on remote, welcoming kids into school. And so I'm excited to take some time together tonight to talk about arrival and dismissal. And if we could go to our next slide. I want to tell you just really clearly what you're going to get out of tonight and what you're not going to get. So, specifically, this call is for our families who have chosen hybrid for at least one of their students. And we're going to really talk about concretely what does arrival and dismissal look like this year? What does it look like for you? What does it look like for your kids? What you're not going to get out of tonight, and so I want to just say it up front so you're not disappointed. You're not going to get an opportunity to meet your child's teacher. We're not going to dive in deep to the schedule or remote learning or logistics. And you might not even have all of your questions answered. And if we go to the next slide, I will tell you what is coming your way after this. You are going to get details in writing, all of this information by end of day Thursday, including your child's updated schedule as we move into our hybrid in-person learning. We are also going to have back to school night on Wednesday, September 23rd. We're really excited about that. Teachers have some really fun things planned for you all to get to know them and to really build the community of families. We're going to have some information. I know there's been a few questions asked about map assessments and how are we going to gauge where kids are with learning that has happened differently in the spring. So we're going to have a family meeting about that. And we also are going to have some family information sessions about Clever, Google Classroom, Seesaw. So lots more of coming. Today, our focus is really just arrival and dismissal. And if we could go to our next slide, specifically, I want to name, like, this is true always, that like community, we are Harlem Hebrew together. I cannot stress enough how important it is for us to be working together this year more than ever. And I think I have said this actually to many of you whom I've had already know. A school's success is really directly correlated into the partnership between the school and the family, and how do we work together. And when I think about when I think about the pandemic and I think about the extra challenges it brings us, the extra challenges it brings you, and God bless them, the extra challenges it brings our kids, it is more important now than ever for us to work together. And so I'm really, really grateful again for you all taking the time tonight to join in. And I'm also grateful in advance for you telling me really honestly, Emily, this is what worked and this is what didn't, because this is going to be new in some ways for all of us. So here's how we're going to spend our time together. I'm going to share I've shared a little bit about our goals, and I'm going to speak specifically about our goals for arrival and dismissal, what they normally are, what is different and unique about them this year, and our guiding principles that we as a school are operating under as we made these plans, and some of the assumptions that go along with that. And then we're going to dive deep into arrival. What exactly does it look like? We're going to dive deep into dismissal as well. So I want to, before we dive in, I want to just share with you, like, how did we get here? So we've been working on this arrival and dismissal plan since the spring, when we started to anticipate that this might happen. And there has been significant work and research from me personally, looking into what other schools are doing and trying to be as creative as possible. We've had support from Hebrew Public. We have guidelines that we have to follow from the Department of Health and from the city and the state. And there have been significant rounds of feedback and vetting and drafts with our leadership team and with our staff and with Hebrew Public as a network. We've had a lot of opportunities from input for a lot of places, even starting as much as last year, what worked with arrival and dismissal and what didn't. And you'll see some things have remained true. And also, I think this is like the one thing that our families really don't get to see behind the scenes, is that our teachers have actually been hard at work practicing this. They've been practicing, like, what does arrival look like? What does dismissal look like? They've been practicing, how are we going to teach it to kids? Our staff was even in the building today doing some practice around this. They'll be back in the building on Thursday, making sure that we are really, really thoughtful about making sure we're ready. And so it is a bit like seeing like a basketball team practice, but we believe that you all deserve us to be our very best. And so that's some of the things that have been happening a bit behind the scenes. So I want to talk about what our goals are for arrival and dismissal. Some of our goals this year, they really haven't changed. Our goals that we've had every year. Our goals are to get kids safely into the building and get them where they need to be. And kids come to us in lots of different ways. Some are on the bus, some are dropped off by families, some kids walk, some kids take public transportation. Our goal in the morning is really to welcome kids into the building, and with love and with joy, with some Hebrew and Israeli music, and just to help kids like feel happy to be at school and happy to be learning. That's all the same. None of that has changed. Those are still our foundational goals. Additionally, this year, we have to consider safety means something a little bit different for all of us this year. And so this year, as we think about kid and adult safety in a different way, we are also thinking about social distancing. We're thinking about mask wearing. We're thinking about some of the pieces that we can assure that our kids and adults are safe before they enter the building. And we also are thinking about limiting adults in the building in a different way related to that social distancing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that exactly means. So some of our guiding principles, and this writing is a little bit small, so I'll make sure I really go over it. Big picture, we're thinking about safety. And I cannot stress that enough. Your child's safety is number one, period. That is always true. It is especially true in this pandemic. We are thinking again about social distancing. We're thinking about safety in terms of who is allowed in our building. And we're also thinking about, really, one of our guiding principles is we have to work together and we have to have patience with each other, because this is going to be new, and this is going to be different, and we're really going to have to be in it together. Some of the assumptions I will tell you that we are making. One, we are going to have a lot of signs outside. We do not expect, I'm going to share all these details with you. I do not expect you to remember it all. I expect our staff to know it all very deeply. I do not, you, families have a lot on their plates. You're not going to remember all the details. So we're going to have a lot of signage, and we're also going to kindly remind folks of our procedures throughout this process. We do assume and expect all members of our community, our staff, our kids, and our families to be wearing masks during arrival and dismissal. We also know and assume, and I've shared this in some of our previous town halls, this process is going to take a little bit longer than usual. And we know and assume that we're going to have some kindness and some grace and some patience with each other during this process. And we know that we're going to have to work to make it faster from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 to day 4 and so on. We also, we know that because of safety purposes, we cannot allow families into our building during arrival and dismissal. We know that will lead to congestion. We know that will lead to an increased opportunities for exposure to COVID-19, which is absolutely not what we want. And so you're going to hear about what that means in our system, but our main office will be closed during this time. We will have folks from our operations team out on the sidewalk ready to answer any questions that you might have, and to help you in any way that they can. We also know that we're going to have to listen to feedback from you all, because there will be something that could go better. I promise you that. And we are excited for your feedback. And then finally, like, we don't actually have all the final answers. If you are typically a family who sends their kids through OPT or Manhattan City busing, we actually don't have the final answers. We as a school community have always historically provided busing for our kiddos in the Bronx. And we have already reached out to those families who are eligible. And if you have questions about that, please reach out directly to our main office. But we are pretty beholden to the city in regards to Manhattan busing. And so we actually don't have answers there yet, unfortunately. And I promise you, as soon as the city gives them to us, we will communicate that out with you all. All right. Now I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to get right into arrival. You're probably like, Emily, let's get to it. I'm with you. And so I'm going to dive right in. Big picture. Arrival is going to take a longer period of time. In past years, arrival has been a 10 to 15 minute window. This year, arrival begins at 8:45 and ends at 9:30. Class starts for our kiddos at 9:30. We are, as we have in previous years, going to have entrances designated by grade level. And again, there will be signage for that. We are thinking, in previous years, when we thought about which entrance was which, we really were only thinking about little kids versus our bigger kids. And our littler ones have littler legs. It takes them a little slower to go up the stairs. We are still thinking about that this year, but we're adding in this additional layer of, we're also trying to be really thoughtful about physically where classrooms are located. Are classrooms located closer to the north entrance or our main entrance, or are our classrooms located closer to the south entrance? With this longer extended period of time, we know that it is possible that folks could all come at the beginning or folks could all come at the end. And we have some suggestions for times where you could come to help with that. But I want to acknowledge, like, I have 6 brothers and sisters. We were all at the same school at the same time. If somebody had told my mom and dad, listen, you got to bring the kids into school, your kindergartner in at this time, your first grader in at this time, your second grader in at this time, that would be very hard for my family. It would be especially hard for my family because with kids at home, things happen, life happens, trains happen here in New York. So we have some suggested times to help with this. But we're going to keep an eye on this. I don't know if lots of families are going to come at the beginning or lots of families are going to come at the end. We're going to find that out sort of together. But what we do suggest is our Pre-K, kindergarten, our youngest kids and our oldest kids come around 8:45 to 9:15, and 9 to 9:30 for grades 1 through 5. But again, we're not going to say, oh, it's not your time, you can't come in the building. Between 8:45 and 9:30, we will happily welcome you in. But if there is a crowd, you might just be waiting in line a little bit longer. So I want to acknowledge that. Outside of the building, what arrival is going to look like is we are going to actually have you all in lines. There's going to be a lot of adults from our school out there on the sidewalk helping with this. In addition to the signage, we're also going to have some markers on the ground. Before kids can enter the building, you will be expected to complete, and I'll talk about this a little bit more. Actually, Roger, would you mind going to our next slide? And for those of you, if you can't see Roger, it says Harlem Hebrew, and he is our one of our amazing Hebrew Public Network team member, and he's helping us out tonight with some of the tech. So prior to entry into this building, into our building, everyone must complete a daily symptom screening. This is going to be sent to you on your phone. There's a picture of what that looks like. And it is a very short questionnaire where you are basically saying what you have and have not been exposed to. And this is really to just affirm everyone coming into our building is safe and secure. The second thing is that every child must have their temperature checked before they enter the building. If kids have a temperature of 100 degrees or higher, they will not be allowed to come into class. When both of those things are complete, a staff member is going to give you a ticket, because we're going to have staff members. We're not going to wait till you come to the door to do all this. That would not be efficient. We're going to have staff members down the block doing these checks with you. We'll give you a ticket, and then when your child gets to the door, they'll just show their ticket and they'll be allowed to enter. And I know that these are 2 extra steps that we are asking of our families and our kids before they enter. But we truly believe that this is a huge step and a huge foundation into us ensuring that our kids are as safe as they absolutely possibly can. So that's sort of what our like requirements are. I want to talk a little bit about like what this kiddo experience is. If we can go to our next slide. So kids are going to arrive at school. They might be with you as a family. They might be coming from our buses. If they're coming from our buses, there are going to be staff there to support. Kids are going to arrive at school and they're going to wait in line for entry. While they're in line, a staff member is going to check their temperature. They're going to check to make sure that a daily symptoms screening has been completed. If it has not, and there will be times where you forget, and there will be times where folks, you can do it at home on the app, and there will be times where our school is going to give you a call and say, hey, we don't have this yet, we need it. And we don't want to nag you, and we don't want to be those people that nag, but we also know like nagging is worth it for our kids' safety. Our kids are going to enter the building. If they need a breakfast, it says lunch, excuse me, but if our kids need breakfast, we will still be offering that to them, and they will walk to class. There are going to be lots of staff along the way, socially distanced, but we are going to be greeting and smiling. And even though you can't see our smiles under our mask, we're going to have some fun props this year, and we're going to be leaning into music. And we still want this to be a fun and joyful space where our kids are greeted. And then they'll go into their classrooms where a teacher will be there to monitor them. There's going to be some space to eat. There's going to be some space to reflect and get ready for the day. We know if you arrive, you might be thinking, if my kids come at 8:45, does that mean they're going to be sitting in their classroom with nothing to do for this whole period? Absolutely not. Our teachers are amazing, and we'll make sure that what they're working on and what they're doing during this time is engaging and worthwhile. I think, the question that probably a lot of folks have on their mind is, what happens if my child has more than 100-degree temperature? We know that this will happen. And odds are high that it will happen. It could happen very early. And I will say our kids will be sent home with remote work on that day. And again, this is not because we don't love your kids and want them here. It is because we want all our kids in our building to be safe, and health and safety is number one. If a family is not there, if you do not personally drop off your child, and the family cannot pick up the child, we are going to have an isolated space in the school, where they will be held in a separate location where they can still work. And we will be reaching out to get support from you all in that process. I want to name that this is something that will feel different for our kids. And I even know as an adult, all of our adults in our building are going through this same screening process. I get my temperature screened every day I walk into Harlem Hebrew. I take my temperature at home before I come here, and I am still nervous when the temperature, like when the thermometer is pointed at my forehead, that I'm going to be over 100 degrees and sent home. I am a grown woman, and I've already checked my temperature at home, and I'm nervous about this. I know that our kids are going to be nervous too. And so I think it highlights another moment where we as adults really have to work together to normalize this for our kids and to remain calm and to remain supportive when this does happen. It's okay. You'll be back to school as soon as it's safe. And so we're going to really normalize that. And we really want to partner with you as well, because we know that even though we as adults understand the importance, and we as staff are going to work together to really make sure that we communicate the rationale to kids, this is new and different, and potentially the thing that might feel a little scary as kids are entering into the building. So that's arrival. I'm going to transition us now to talk about dismissal. And dismissal, if you are a returning family, you know that this is something that has historically been a little bit more complicated for Harlem Hebrew, or just any family who's had kids in school before. Dismissal is always more complicated. Arrival, kids come to school, we greet them. Dismissal, kids have lots of places that they could be, or lots of ways that they could get home. And it's really important that we make sure our kiddos are really safe. Some of those complications that we have: our sidewalk is really small and cramped. I have seen schools that do dismissal right on the sidewalk. Their sidewalks are usually much larger, so it's safer. Our NPR can socially distance a small number of kids, but it's not the whole school. It's not even half the school. We have to make sure that the right person that the parents and guardians have signed off on is picking up our kids. We have to make sure that safety generally is happening here, especially when we have kids leaving our building physically. We also have to make sure that we are efficient with this process. Families have places to be, kids have places to be. And also, this had to be planned with our information in mind. So this is another space for me to say thank you to you all who took the time to complete that survey about arrival and dismissal and how your kids are getting home. If you have not yet completed that, our ops team is going to be calling you by the end of this week, because we have to know, for us to make sure our kiddos are safe, we have to know exactly how they're getting home and how you want them to get home. That being said, there is something in our favor this year, which is that because of our hybrid model, we have a significantly smaller number of kids in the building. We have, specifically in middle school, about 60% of our grades 6 through 8 community, and actually grades 5 through 8 community, have decided to opt into fully remote learning, which leaves us with about, depending on the grade, anywhere from between 30 to 40% of the kids in hybrid. In our younger grades, it's at about 50%. So with that overall number of roughly 45% of our kids physically in the building, because of our cohort model, only half of that group is physically in the building at any given number of time. And so with this significantly smaller number of kids, we are able to really thoughtfully think about how do we support kids safely throughout this procedure. So with that, there's basically three major ways that kids are dismissed and go home. The first is busing. And kids who ride the bus, if it's on the Bronx bus, we really take care of that at school. If buses are running late, we are going to send a text message out to families. We're going to update the Facebook group just like we have in previous years. We are also going to do that for our Manhattan buses if the city chooses to cooperate with us and we get those running sooner than later, fingers crossed. We also have kids who are going to walk home on their own. Maybe they're older, maybe they live in the community. That is, again, like something that we do know happens, and it's a little more basic. Family pickup is going to be the one that is the most complicated. It's going to be the one I talk the most about. Historically, what we have done as a community is that we have allowed our families to come into the building to pick up their kids. This is a fun opportunity for them to see classrooms, for them to interact with teachers. We cannot do that this year because we have to make sure that we are limiting the number of people in our building and limiting exposure. That's for your kids' safety. That's for your safety. That's for our staff safety. So with that in mind, just like last year, we have two entrances into the building, and we're going to use those two entrances in exactly the same way that we did last year. Our north entrance, or our main entrance, is going to be our family pickup entrance. If you are picking up kids, that is going to be the entrance. I'm going to talk about what that entrance looks like in just a moment. If kids ride the bus, or if kids are walkers, they are going to exit through our south entrance. Dismissal is quite complicated for us because all of this is happening at the same time. So it's really important for safety of how we're monitoring these entrances and exits and security that we are maintaining one entrance is for pickup and one entrance is for buses and for walkers. So if you're a returning family, that is actually not new to you. I want to talk about pickup. So pickup, our dismissal is also longer than it's been in previous years. And I will give you a little bit of background that in my very intense research about what is possible and creatively thinking out of the box, I did some research into what do schools with large spaces outside do for pickup, or what do schools who have families, lots of families driving by do for pickup. And that's where some of my inspiration came from. So if you've ever been in a more suburban setting or in a school with a much larger yard space than we have, you'll see some similarities. For our family perspective, there are going to be some windows where you can pick up your kids. For our littlest ones, that pickup is first from 2:45 to 3 p.m. And for our older kiddos, it's going to be from 3 to 3:30. For grades pre-K through fourth grade, we are going to bring our kids down to the NPR. You'll notice that this window is split up into two different times. The reason it is split up into two different times is, again, related to social distancing and the number of kids we can safely fit into the NPR. You as a parent, if you are a parent of pre-K through fourth grade, you are going to line up at our north entrance. When you are lined up there, you are going to show there's going to be staff members there waiting. Staff members are going to ask you to show your ID. If you go to our next slide, staff members are going to ask you to show your ID. This is new. The reason why we did not implement this in previous years is because families would go directly to classrooms, already have a relationship with teachers, and sign off on a piece of paper. With this new dismissal, That's not quite as possible. And folks are going to be wearing masks, which does cover half of your face. It is so, so, so important to us that all of our kids go home with the right adults. And so we know that this is an extra step and we appreciate you. You're going to show your ID. You're going to line up. You're going to show your ID. A staff member, we're going to have lots of staff with walkie-talkies. They're going to come in and they're going to say something like, student A's parent is here. That student will then be told by an adult to exit the building. So you'll be standing right at the doorway and be able to collect your child. This is for grades pre-K through 4th grade. Teachers will be monitoring which kids have been picked up. And again, we do have these 2 windows for pre-K and kindergarten and grades 1 through 4. We know that there might be an inconvenience if you have a student who is in kindergarten and a student who is in the older grades, because we are going to have these 2 different windows. We apologize in advance for that. The reason is because, again, there's only a certain number of kids that we can physically fit into our multi-purpose room or our gym. I said MPR a few times. Meanwhile, in grades 5 to 8, our students are actually going to be escorted by their teachers to wait outside next to the garden outside of our school. You might be thinking, Emily, is that safe? Will all of those kids fit there socially distanced? The answer is yes. We have the data from you all. We also know that it's anywhere from 30 to 40% of our middle schoolers who actually have chosen hybrid, which means that it's only 15 to 20% of our kids in middle school who are here at any given moment. Within that number, we have a lot of middle schoolers who walk home on their own or ride the bus. So it's actually a very small number in our upper grades. And so that is why we are able to have them wait outside. Our teachers, we're going to have a lot of teachers there. We're going to have a lot of staff there. And you can expect that staff will be saying to you as adults, we need you to step back and socially distance. We ask you not to be offended. And we won't be offended if you say the same thing to us. And our teachers are really going to be monitoring kids during this time. And again, everybody is going to be wearing a mask. Now, you might be thinking, there are some questions that probably come to mind. 1, what if I'm late? That's okay. We have a plan for the late kids, and we will make sure if you are late, you will just, if you are one of our families who is for late pickup, it's going to be a similar process, but it just might take a little bit longer for our kids to come to you. And we do ask that you try to be here during these windows because we have to staff extra folks during this time. You might be wondering, well, what if someone else needs to pick up my child today? That is totally okay. But you do need to call the main office and let them know because we don't want to send your child home with just anybody who says, oh, well, my friend so-and-so said I could pick up the kids today. So if there are changes, you just need to call the main office on that day and make that change. You also might make a change from, I don't want my kid to ride the bus today. I want them to be picked up. That's also totally, totally okay. Additionally, you might be wondering, well, what if I forget to tell the main office that somebody else needs to pick up my kids? If you forget, I'm going to tell you, we'll start calling you, but we are not going to send your kids home with someone that you have not authorized to us that it is okay. Even if that person, we have met that person before and we know that they're related to you, we want to be 125% sure that we are sending your child home with the right person. And so if you forget, that's okay. People forget. But we're going to call you, and please don't be annoyed. Pick up the phone when we do, and don't be annoyed if we tell your friend, sorry, we don't have that confirmed yet. You also might be wondering, well, what if our buses are late? we're going to update you. That happens. It does happen. And unfortunately, with city traffic and all the things, it does happen, and we are going to update you. And then finally, this is not here. You might be wondering, like, what about where's security? Doesn't Harlem Hebrew have security? Yes, we have security who is involved during this process. In addition to all of the staff, our entire staff, despite the fact that we are only going to have about 25 to 30% of our school in the building at any given moment, 100% of our staff are supporting with arrival and dismissal. Even our teachers who are teaching kids who are 100% remote are coming into the building to support with arrival and dismissal, because we know that this is a time that has to be all of us together, and are the safety and security of our kids, and you all and our staff is of paramount importance. So I'm going to pause there. I have done a lot of talking. What I am just going to share is that there is more coming in writing on Thursday. If you have dropped something into the chat, we're going to make sure that those questions, we're going to gather those questions. We're going to make sure that they're very, very clearly answered in that communication that goes home on Thursday. So if you type something in the chat and you don't get a phone call from me or from someone in the main office, please don't be alarmed. I promise you we're not ignoring you. We have Roger here who's taking down those notes for us, and we're going to make sure that all of those questions are answered very thoroughly and in writing. And finally, I want to start with I want to end where we started, which is just, this is complicated. And me sharing this might have given you some of your own anxiety or thinking about, how do I logistically make this work? But I want to say thank you, because you do trust us with your kids every day. And that is an honor, and that is a privilege that we do not take for granted. And we are really, really so happy and excited to get to be able to welcome your kiddos back into the building, even in this weird socially distanced way. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for taking this time with me tonight. And I look forward to seeing many of you in person, even from 6 feet away with a mask on next week. And with that, thank you. More coming on Thursday. Y'all have a great night.